Oh, there's a hurricane or there's a disaster in the world, something like that. No, this is much more serious.
At that point, yeah, it was almost like everyone who was born would be immediately overcome by hell, and then that'd be the end of it. That's why Jesus came.
Because people's concepts of who God is got messed up.
You know that
Judgment.
there's a song by Cake? Sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell. Come on, can we play that in the... Okay. No, we'll get a copyright strike. So this is
You're
what...
so musical.
Low bar these days. This is what Swedenborg reported seeing. Like one of the biggest news pieces that he came out with.
Yeah.
And this is, if anyone's not familiar, welcome to our channel. Emanuel Swedenborg is this absolutely unprecedented phenomena in the history of the human race, where you have somebody who has just these long-running, super clearly reported reports on what's going on with everything, including like who God is, why is the Bible like it is, where do we go after we die, and
he's a scientist and an engineer. You know, he's not a guru on a mountaintop or something. It's an interesting person to go through this. You're
going to see how non-guru it is, because here he's talking about like the most intense event that ever happened. He's just like, okay, here, let me report this, field notes for this. In case you're wondering what the Last Judgment was like, this is it happening in the year 1757. This is from his book, Last Judgment, 45.
Oh, he wrote a book called Last Judgment?
Yeah, he sure did. Man, you gotta merchandise that. What is it? Like, you take advantage. You were there and saw it. You might as well. Right. And this is, look at like why he gets to go and have these spiritual adventures.
The why.
For what purpose? To prevent people who think about the Last Judgment from having to wait for it forever. And this was back in 1757.
They'd already been waiting
You
forever.
think people, then had been waiting forever. What about us? Which will lead in time to an erosion of their trust in the things said in the literal meaning of the word about it.
Which I would say is just gospel truth. I mean, in the sense that I think a lot of people have felt like, well, the four horsemen of the apocalypse was almost laughable because like it never keeps not happening, and so it's sort of a joke.
Yeah, and well, he says, and therefore to prevent many from losing their faith in the word, I have been allowed to see with my own eyes that the Last Judgment has already taken place.
Yeah.
So he got to go peer through and see this, which is, I guess, what was going on with John in the Isle of Patmos. He was seeing a preview of this.
Yeah, that's right. In the world above time and space, he sort of gets a preview of what's happening.
Why does Swedenborg get to see that? Because the rest of us are going to sit here and look at this book that says this weird stuff about the lake of fire and the sea giving up their dead. It's going to happen, and they're going to see the decades and the centuries tick by and say, this didn't happen. I'm throwing this away. I'm getting rid of Christianity. I don't care about Jesus Christ. And to Swedenborg, that would be a big mistake, because actually it's awesome what's in there, but you just got to understand what it really means.
Yeah, and you got an odd mix in this world now, don't you, where you have a bunch of people who feel like, oh, I know the Bible says a lot of weird stuff. It's just don't pay any attention to that. And then you've got a bunch of people who think there's literally going to be like a rapture and everybody's hauled out of their shoes. Suddenly you're on the highway and you disappear out the top of your, convertible car or something. So there's an odd mix right now of these different views, but none of them really satisfy they don't check all the boxes. Like, why would the Bible say
neither
that?
of those is contributing to human well-being. And to human regeneration, reformation, repentance, spiritual growth. It's not, we're missing the point. Okay, so that's why Swedenborg has these experiences. I have been allowed to see with my own eyes, the Last Judgment has already taken place. And this is what it was like in the spiritual world, which this sounds very biblical. The evil have been cast into various hells. The good have been raised into heaven. And in this way, everything has been brought back into proper order, restoring the spiritual equilibrium between good and evil, between heaven and hell. Can you give, what's some background on that? Because if you're not familiar with Swedenborg's reports of what the spiritual world is like and what was going on in the time, what is this and why does it matter?
Yeah, basically, he describes a world in which you have a heaven above and you have hell beneath, and then there's this area in between called the world of spirits, and that's sort of a clearinghouse where people go after they die, where you sort of figure out who you are or what's really your innermost essence and get rid of the other stuff that's extraneous, or if you were sort of putting on a show for people or something like that. So the show's over. Who are you really?
If you think,
everybody comes to their own honest self.
and if you think that sounds arbitrary and far-fetched, look at your breakfast this morning. According to Swedenborg, the process of digestion, like of eating food, every living organism does this. Things come into it. There is a breaking down and a sorting process where it becomes apparent where these things belong or don't belong in the body.
Yeah.
This is the divine design. This is like how God does things.
That's amazing.
It's in everything. And so it happens on the grandest scale in heaven and hell, or in the afterlife, which is where people come into the afterlife. There's a heaven, which is like a human body where everyone wants to work together and do good things. And everybody needs to get figured out to, like, where do you belong in this heaven? What part of it are you? Or are you anti-heaven and you need to go out...
Yeah, because the body doesn't have a use for you,
Yeah.
And so it's like whatever. It's like, well, we can't. We tried. We took it all the way through the large intestine or whatever. There's just no value here, So it gets cast off.
And the thing, Jesus saved the world from total destruction in 1757. This was a crisis. It wasn't just like, well, I already said I was going to do the Last Judgment. Oh, I didn't do that already. Well, let me just, okay, it's 1757. By now, I better get around to it. The equilibrium was at risk.
Yeah.
And people might say, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't care about that thing. The equilibrium is the environment in which your consciousness exists. The balance between heaven and hell. That's what creates the human mind. That we have heaven is on one side, kind of giving you good thoughts and feelings. Hell is on the other, giving you negative. You exist in the middle, and you get to choose if you want to be good or bad. If that goes out of whack, everybody dies.
And it fills me with awe that the Lord is taking care of stuff that we are totally we don't know anything about it. And yet this thing threatens, much more serious than any sort of, there's a hurricane or there's a disaster in the world, something like that. No, this is much more serious because then you lose human freedom and then the whole experiment comes to an end, The freedom is so crucial to the whole thing. And so what was happening was that you had a lot of evil spirits accumulating in this sort of sorting area, the world of spirits. It's tipping over to where there's too many of them, and the way that things had been structured, everything flows down through that area. So it was actually blocking what people were able to think and feel. It was making it more and more difficult to be a good person.
Yeah.
And pretty soon the lights were going to go out. So that whole thing needed to be cleaned out. So I'm interested in that image when it talks about the sea giving up, literally you might think, I guess there are people who were out sailing and they got shipwrecked and they drowned or something. Yeah. But no, the sea is an area of that spiritual world that it's holding all these people that have been there for a while, and it gives them up because now is the time. Now there's going to be this judgment and things are going to be revealed. And part of what was revealed was that there were people who were hypocritical. They seem good on the outside. They're really evil on the inside. But they've been able to carry this on for a long time and people were fooled by it. But now it's going to be revealed. So anyway, maybe that's too much information, but that was the setting. That's what needed to happen. And who in this world knew the thing about it?
And if you at home are thinking, that sounds far-fetched, that God is going to try to fix some equilibrium, it sounds like you're starting to talk like Star Trek or something. Just look at you waking up this morning. While you were asleep, snoring away for 7 hours, God was making sure the equilibrium, or if you want to we can just say your body was making sure the equilibrium stayed inside you. Like throughout that whole night, you were inhaling and exhaling. That is because there's an equilibrium of oxygen and carbon dioxide or something like that that needs to be where it is in your body. Your blood sugar has to be in equilibrium. There has to be everything. Your temperature needs to be in equal. Everything needs to be where it is. The last judgment is like, let's say you're holding your breath and holding your breath and holding your breath, and there is a buildup of carbon dioxide, and you're going to die from it. And when you that's what the last judgment is. Like, we got to fix this now, or it's like a blocked artery or something. Like, this has got to be fixed right now, or the human race is going to die. That's what was going on. That's why you had this last judgment.
Another analogy that occurs to me about sleep is psychologically that my father knew someone who had a disease that was hereditary where you lose the ability to sleep. You can't go to sleep.
Ugh.
It kills you in a couple of months. It absolutely kills you, and it's a miserable death, because in between there you're hallucinating all the time. You completely lose touch with reality. Not being able to sleep is extremely destructive. So also, while we're sleeping, there's a physical equilibrium that's being established. There's also psychological equilibrium that's being established, where memories are being processed and sorted and put away. If you study something and then you go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, you know more about it in the morning than you did the night before, because things got moved. The order is restored in there every single night. So there's a little image of this in our reality every day. It's kind of amazing. And so the last judgment would be like somebody who hasn't slept for months or something. They're out of their minds. They're hallucinating. They can't tell what reality is anymore. And this thing needs to be restored. We need to get this back on track.
So the process by which Jesus did this, Swedenborg says, the Lord did this, is called redemption in some places. This is what he says about it in his book, True Christianity. And this is what was going on in this last judgment. Redemption was actually a matter of gaining control of the hells, restructuring the heavens, and by doing so, preparing for a new spiritual church. I can say with absolute certainty that these three actions are redemption, because the Lord is bringing about redemption again today. This new redemption began in the year 1757, along with a last judgment that happened at that time. The redemption has continued from then until now. The reason is that today is the second coming of the Lord. A new church is being instituted that could not have been instituted unless first the hells were brought under control and the heavens were restructured. So you can't, why can't God make the world better? Well, first you have to do this. It's like, why can't we're just going to beat these body metaphors into the ground. Why can't I sleep well? It's because you're super congested, or it's because something's got to be addressed first.
I like the fact that it really seems meaningful to me that it has to deal with the hell part first. You got to deal with the hell part first. So the hell part gets addressed, and then once that's taken care of, and that's kind of offline or it's somewhere else, then you can restructure. And I like the restructuring, make it stronger so that it won't happen again. With anything that happens in this world, when something breaks or goes wrong, you investigate, you figure out what it was, and then you deal with whatever that was, and then you also strengthen things. Mm-hmm. If somebody got through your back door because your lock doesn't work or something like that, you get a new lock. You fix it so that it won't happen again.
The last judgment happened before.
This wasn't the first time. That's true.
But the other relatively recent time it happened was Jesus' first coming.
That's right.
There was why did Jesus come to the earth? And I think this is something people have grappled with. And there's a prevailing theory that it's like God was so angry at the human race that Jesus had to get sacrificed to calm him down.
Right.
So that he wouldn't destroy all of us. In reality,
it's a little bit right that things were out of whack. It's way wrong about what was actually happening.
But it was the same thing. It was the same thing where things that got so imbalanced. There was so much hell in the system because so many people were choosing hell. Hell was getting strong because people in this world, you choose a life of hell with murder and revenge and adultery, and then you go die and you continue to pursue that. You join Team Hell there. That was getting so overwhelming that at that point, it was almost like everyone who was born would be immediately overcome by hell, and then that would be the end of it. That's why Jesus came, and then he solved that for a while, but always, even when he was here coming the first time, he's like, I'm coming back, and I'm going to do something, because this was phase one.
Phase one.
Phase two is happening.
That's right. So, and part of phase one was that there needed to be something divine all the way down on the earth. Before that, it was sort of a trickle-down deal through heaven.
Yeah.
But the trickle-down was getting messed up. It wasn't getting all the way down to people. So having something divine all the way down here was huge.
It's like a pacemaker or something. Like I need to come and get something here. Like your cardiovascular system is such a mess that what we need to do is get something in here that can fix it. And then phase two is like, all right, we're activating that.
We're activating it. And part of what happened, I think, because I've thought a lot about after Jesus came, how did it get messed up again? I can understand how it got messed up before.
Yeah.
How did it get messed up again? And my best understanding of that is that because people's concepts of who God is got messed up. That's a big part of it. If you don't understand who the Lord is, it gets messed up again.
Part of what was messing it up was the very thing I just said, that people were sitting there telling everyone all the time, God is so furious at us.
That's right.
He would have no problem just annihilating all of us. But he only didn't because Jesus died and he saw it. Just painting this completely monstrous picture of God to fundamentally misunderstand who God is, which how are you going to have that as a picture of God and not then have that seep down into a bunch of people who are following God, going out and murdering and destroying and conquering, because you'd taken what was a picture of heaven, which is like love one another as I've loved you, turn the other cheek, and turned it into a picture of hell, which is if you don't do what I want, I will kill you. And so, of course, it's building up. Of course, the human race is, where it was.
Yeah, and that picture of God the Father, like how numb or twisted do you have to be where the only thing that'll move your heart is seeing your own child tortured? Like, okay, I'm feeling something.
Yeah.
It's finally getting through to me.
Well, it makes you sound like you're some like tottering old, like you shouldn't be there running the universe. So that was part of what was wrecking things.
That's a problem.
This is why actually Swedenborg said that Jesus came and told him all this stuff, because part of it was Christianity was so messed up. That was part of what was messing up the afterlife. And there's a bunch of Christians that had all these weird ideas in their head that weren't leading them to being good people and weren't leading them to doing the work of repentance and everything that Jesus was saying. And they were like plaque in the arteries. It was a problem.
Yeah.
We continue. Gaining control over the hells, restructuring the heavens, and establishing a new church was redemption, because without those actions, no human being could have been saved. In fact, they followed in a sequence. Hey, you said this is something that you just said. The hells had to be controlled first before a new angelic heaven could be formed. And that heaven had to be formed before a new church on earth could be instituted.
Oh, makes sense.
Because people in the world are so closely connected to angels from heaven and spirits from hell that at the level of the inner mind, they are one.
And Swedenborg's got to know, this is going to seem so strange to everybody, because almost nobody thinks, angels or evil spirits, most people are not in that mindset.
At least
they weren't then, and not many are now.
At least it doesn't sound strange now.
That's
like
right.
Somebody who accidentally clicked on this,
normal
or somebody who walked in.
They're talking about normal things.
Look at those guys. They're cool. I would invite them to be my friend somewhere. They aren't weird. You've got this incredibly dire situation where the only remedy is this major tear everything down, rebuild it, that was the last judgment. And yet, And Swedenborg says that happened in the spiritual world. And in the spiritual world, it was as dramatic as you can possibly imagine. He talked about like mountains being moved. Everything you see in the book of Revelation, the lakes of fire, all this sort of stuff.
It's like literally true up there. Yeah,
literally true up there. I would say with the caveat that you have to understand people being thrown into the lake of fire, like it's saying there. There's a fundamental truth about heaven and hell, which is that nobody has to go to heaven. Nobody has to go to hell. It's your own heart that puts you somewhere.
That's right.
God is love itself. So anytime you see somebody who you're like, wow, that person, that was a really nice thing to do. I tried to hurt you, but you could have hurt me back, but you didn't. Anytime there's anything that's admirable, that's coming from God. Anytime you see like a parent who's like self-sacrificing for a child, that's coming out of God. God is love itself. That love does not just say, get out of here and I'm going to crush you. And like, you have to understand, God is always trying to keep people out of hell. But if people have a ton of hell in their heart, they can't be separated from hell. So the last judgment is just like, all right, well, if you're going to have hell in you, you need to have it in the place where you're not destroying everything for people who have not chosen hell. That's what the judgment is.